I'm Super G Mode, and welcome to a critical review of my landing. So, disclaimer, I am a professional, but I'm not an expert. Everything that I'm about to say about my landing and about how we do this mail run is based off of my training, my experience, my opinions, and what I have learned and heard from other pilots, which may be different from yours. And I don't pretend that I'm the best guy in the world at this, and I don't pretend to know everything about this. So, now that that's out of the way, this is the world's shortest mail run. It's about a 12 to 15 minute long flight. I take off from an airport with the mail and cargo. Climb up to 3,000 feet to make the 12-mile journey across the water to this island of roughly 20 to 30 permanent residents, or at least there's 20 to 30 people who get their mail on the island. Landing on a road, east-west road. It's a dirt road. It's about, I want to say, 15 to 18 feet wide on like turf, and from the tree line to tree line, it's probably about 60 to 75 feet wide. So you do have a little bit of wiggle room. If you needed to land like hard on one side or another to let vehicles get by, you can maneuver the aircraft to be more closer to the ditch if vehicles need to get by. Honestly, fuck that, because you're asking me to deliver someone's Amazon's parcel by aircraft on a not runway. So I'm gonna probably stay in the middle of the road, and you're just gonna have to wait, 10, 15 minutes for me to offload the mail, load up the new mail, and get out of there. Couple things. First thing I do a low-level inspection, treat it like a precautionary landing. It's going to look the same all the time, but the problem is people do actually use this road, and they actually do not pay attention when planes are around. So I have had to overshoot because of side-by-sides and vehicles and people on the road. There are some people who insist on sitting at the edge of the road where I'm trying to touch down, and I have to land beyond them because I don't want to touch down and risk throwing a bunch of rocks in their faces. So, low-level inspection. Since this island's basically at sea level, I do it about 300 to 500 feet above sea level. Probably 200 to 400 feet above the ground. I don't think the island even gets that high. I overshoot, I come around, I do my circuit. I try to do a standard circuit, or circuit for us, I guess, for any Americans, it would be the Padron. 1,000 feet above the landing surface, which again in this case is basically sea level, and I come in as normal as one can when you're landing on a narrow dirt road in the middle of the ocean. Which means this Cessna 172N, 40 degrees of flaps, a little bit of power, trying to touch down as gently as possible, don't be too hard on the brakes, and try to keep the nose wheel off the ground for as long as possible. The nose wheel's basically just there for steering and to keep the aircraft balanced, but it doesn't like too much pressure on it, and it doesn't like going too fast. So, I find I land one of two ways here. I either land a little rough but super, super, super short, or I land as gentle as a feather, but I use a little bit more runway in doing that. The difference is, when I'm landing short, I kind of almost force myself down, perhaps with a little less power and a little less nose-up attitude than I should have to kill the speed sooner, so I land a little harder. For gentler, I tend to keep the speed and power up a little more, and I just try to hold the plane off, just barely above the ground for a long time and let it gently sink. Trying to find a compromise between the two where I land before the road goes downhill, but soft enough that I'm not risking throwing any rocks or damaging to the aircraft. The old guy who did this before me suggested that in the downwind, get yourself set up to where you want to land, get your speed where you want it, and go full flaps immediately, and just make subtle changes to pitch and power on your way down. And for the longest time, like for the first 4 or 5 flights I did with him, that was the only way I found I could actually get myself down, because I found if I flew the plane like a sensible Cessna pilot, I put my flaps down in sections, and I didn't commit to full flaps until I was just like 100% convinced I was going to land. And the problem is, it's really hard to convince yourself to land on this. So straight ahead, you can kind of see the wider part of the dirt road that's kind of angling off slightly to the right. That is where I'm going to try to land. And I want to try to stop around the windsock when I'm landing westerly. Easterly, I kind of like easterly a little better, if I gotta be honest. But like, winds are never from... If the winds are from the east around here, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I flying? Like, the only time the winds are from the not west is when we've got a storm coming in. So, right now, I'm trying to maintain about 65 to 75 knots, 10 degrees of flaps, and you can't see it too well, but I want to be as close as I can over where I'm going to land. And I want to look down it. So, coming up, it's just off to the left now is the windsock and that gray house. This spot right here is very flat, very straight, very level. And as soon as you see the dark patches on that road disappear is where it starts to go downhill. Now, this next driveway that just disappeared right there, that is where you need to stop by. If you're beyond that driveway and that house, that white house that you couldn't see because it's a little ways in the woods, you do not have enough runway to make it. And that's the end of the landing surface. So now I climb. When I have 3 positive rates, vertical speeds showing a positive rate, my altimeter is increasing, and I've got a positive rate attitude, so nose slightly pitched up, and 500 feet above anything hard, I put up my flaps. Overshooting. I'm in the left crosswind turn now, and then I'll be in the left downwind for landing west. So as I was saying, the old guy would have you, when you're just across from where you plan on touching down, go full flaps, reduce power, and just kind of almost turn in steady, almost like a power off 180. And but you'd have a little bit of power because you'd want that power in order to overshoot. Also, there is some differences of opinions with regards to carburetor heat in this aircraft. The old guy would suggest that he wanted all the power he could, so he would have his carburetor heat off. He wouldn't use it. I would never do that. But if I must be honest with you, it's not a bad idea. So maybe on short final, as you go full flaps for the island, turn off your carburetor heat so you've got that little bit of power if you needed to overshoot. Me, I fly this like a Cessna pilot that learned to fly after the year 2000. I put my flaps down in sections. 10 degrees in the downwind. You can see me bringing the power back now to get my speed below 110 miles an hour because it's an N model and they can't ever be consistent. I love you, Cessna, don't change, but please can you just be consistent? Maybe even I might have even put 20 degrees of flaps down in the downwind to just kind of get the attitude rate, because unfortunately with 10 degrees of flaps, you're not really generating enough drag to slow the plane down. You're just generating more lift. That's why you use 10 for takeoff. You need 20. Now, because this is sketchy, and I'm not gonna lie, a little scary until you get used to it, I tend to come in a little high. I think I need to come in a little lower and a little shallower, kind of more like an ILS, come in on a 3-degree angle, at a fairly reduced rate of descent. At this point, my rate of descent is probably around 500 to 700 feet per minute, which is fine for a normal landing. But when you're landing on an unimproved surface, you're landing on gravel, and you don't know the conditions below it, you maybe not want to touch down that hard. So come in a little shallower. And like a good Cessna pilot, I wait until I'm committed to the landing. Good, nervous, cautious Cessna pilot. I wait till I'm committed before I go full flaps. The other thing I found, you have to start your flare basically over the trees if you want to touch down really, really short, because you don't really want to waste runway in coming to a spot like this. There's not much room to turn the plane around. You can't turn the plane around under power. You have to get out, push down on the tail, and twist it around. And that's no fun by yourself. And because it's a road and there's a crown in it, you risk having the plane pull on you one way or the other when it's not under power. Okay, this is a little, perhaps a little high. It could probably be a little bit lower. Like, there's still a couple feet between me and the trees. I could probably get closer to the trees without hitting them. Maybe? Really watch your center line and yaw control. And just before I land, I'm going to kind of go up to cruise. A hair more power. And did you hear that? The doot, doot, doot. Slight bounces. I landed very short, just in front of the windsock. But that was a little rougher than I would have liked it. And this is that hard, flat surface I mentioned earlier. So, all in all, I think I need to come in a little shallower with a little bit more power and a little bit slower.